They called him a nuisance. Said his tractors ruined their perfect view, that his barn was an eyesore among their fancy homes and manicured lawns. Some whispered that he didn't belong there, that his skin, his accent, his quiet way of life didn't fit the neighborhood charm. But Elijah Brown didn't fight back. He never shouted, never argued. He just kept working his fields like his father did before him, rising before dawn and resting only when the stars came out. Every morning, his old blue tractor would rumble down the dirt path that led to the far edge of his land, the border that brushed up against the shiny new houses of Pinegrove Hills. Those homes had glass walls, infinity pools, and driveways big enough for 3 cars. They looked down on Elijah's weathered farmhouse like it was something dirty that needed to be scrubbed away. Elijah didn't care much about their opinions. He'd lived on that land for 62 years. His father had tilled that soil with his bare hands, and his grandfather had bought it after years of saving pennies from working the railroads. For Elijah, the land wasn't just dirt, it was blood, memory, and promise. But lately, he'd been watching something else. The dam above Pinegrove, the big concrete wall that held back the water of Miller's Creek, had been whispering to him. Not literally, of course, but Elijah had spent his life reading the land. He could tell when the earth was uneasy, when something deep beneath was shifting. Every evening, he'd walk the fence line that ran near the dam, his lantern swinging in the dark. Sometimes, his neighbors would see that dim light from their porches and laugh. "There goes the crazy old farmer again," they'd say, sipping wine on their patios. Talking to the ground. But Elijah wasn't crazy. He'd noticed something strange. The soil near the lower ridge had started to breathe, rising and falling slightly, like a living thing. He could hear faint hissing sounds when he pressed his ear to the earth, like trapped air escaping. He tried to tell people. He went to the town office first. The young clerk barely looked up from her computer when he spoke. "The dam's fine, Mr. Brown," she said. "We just had it inspected last year." He tried the homeowners association next. They told him he wasn't part of their jurisdiction. One man even laughed in his face. "Sir, maybe you should worry about your farm before trying to manage public infrastructure," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. So Elijah stopped talking to people. He talked to the land instead. Weeks passed, and the strange noises grew louder. At night, his windows would rattle softly, and the cows would moo nervously in their stalls. Birds that used to perch on his fences began avoiding the area altogether. Even the air smelled different, damp and metallic. One night, a young boy named Jamie wandered up to Elijah's property. He lived with his parents in one of the new homes above the ridge. He often watched Elijah from his bedroom window, fascinated by the way the old man worked. That evening, Jamie found Elijah kneeling near the fence, lantern flickering beside him, hand pressed to the soil. "What are you doing?" the boy asked. Elijah looked up, his face weathered but kind. "Listening," he said softly. "The ground's trying to tell us something." Jamie tilted his head, confused. "What's it saying?" Elijah sighed. "That something's about to give." The boy frowned. "Like an earthquake." "Worse," Elijah murmured. The next morning, the town held its annual spring fair. Families from Pinegrove gathered in the park, children ran with balloons, and food trucks lined the street. Nobody noticed the dark line that had appeared on the dam's surface overnight, a thin crack that spidered down its side. Elijah did. He drove his tractor up the old access road, stopping near the maintenance gate. He could see water seeping slowly through the crack, darkening the concrete. He waved down a security guard and told him what he saw, but the man just shook his head. "Sir, you can't be here," he said. "Please go back down." By the time Elijah returned home, he could feel it in his bones, the deep rumble of something shifting underground. That night, heavy rain fell. Thunder rolled across the valley, and lightning lit up the dam like a ghostly wall in the dark. Elijah barely slept. Around 3 a.m., he heard it, the sound he'd been dreading. A low, moaning groan, followed by a sharp crack that echoed like thunder. He jumped out of bed and ran outside, rain soaking his shirt in seconds. In the distance, the dam shuddered again, another piece of concrete breaking loose. He knew he didn't have much time. He started his tractor and drove toward the upper ridge where the new home stood. The road was muddy, nearly washed out. When he reached the first house, he began honking his horn, shouting over the rain. "Get out! The dam's breaking!" Lights flicked on in windows. Confused faces appeared at doors. Some recognized him and rolled their eyes, thinking the old man had finally lost his mind. But when the ground trembled again, harder this time, their expressions changed. Within minutes, panic spread. People grabbed their kids, their pets, whatever they could carry, and rushed toward higher ground. Elijah guided them with his headlights, shouting directions. His voice cut through the storm like a lifeline. Then, the sound came. A deep, roaring crash, like the sky itself collapsing. The dam burst open. A wall of black water surged down the valley, tearing through trees, fences, and roads. Cars floated like toys. Houses cracked under the force. Elijah's tractor engine sputtered as the first wave of water hit the lower edge of the neighborhood. He turned toward Jamie's house, the one with the blue shutters. He could see the boy's mother trapped on the porch, screaming his name. Without hesitation, Elijah plowed through the flood, the tractor nearly tipping. He reached the porch and pulled the boy up, one arm gripping him tight as water rose around the wheels. He shouted for the mother to climb up, and she did, clinging to the side as Elijah steered toward the hill. They barely made it. Behind them, the neighborhood vanished under a sea of muddy water. The roar faded into a terrible silence. When dawn came, Pinegrove looked like a ghost town. The once beautiful houses lay broken, their white walls stained brown. Rescue teams arrived hours later, and news crews followed soon after. That's when the truth came out. Engineers discovered that the dam's foundation had been eroding for years. The soil beneath had been slowly hollowing out, creating pressure pockets that no inspection had caught. Elijah's warnings had been right all along. His mumbling about the ground breathing wasn't madness, it was experience. He'd sensed the danger months before anyone else did. The townspeople who had mocked him stood in silence as the governor's team declared the disaster a result of negligence and ignored reports. When the reporters asked how he knew, Elijah just said, "You listen to the earth long enough, it starts talking back." The story spread fast. News outlets called him the farmer who saved Pinegrove. Interviews poured in, and letters came from across the country thanking him for his courage. But Elijah didn't care for fame. He just rebuilt his fences and tended to his crops, same as always. Jamie visited often after that. He'd sit on the porch, asking Elijah to tell him about farming, about the dam, about how he knew what others didn't. Elijah would smile and say, "Sometimes, boy, people think silence means weakness. But silence just means you're listening deeper than they ever could." Months later, the community held a ceremony in his honor. They offered him a medal, a new truck, and even a key to the city. Elijah accepted them politely, but he looked uneasy standing in the spotlight. When they asked him to speak, he said something that would stay with everyone there. "You can rebuild a wall, but not respect. Don't wait until the ground shakes to start listening." The crowd fell silent. Even the people who had once laughed at him bowed their heads. After the flood, the town changed. They built a memorial near the dam, with a plaque that read, "In honor of Elijah Brown, who saw what others wouldn't, and saved what they couldn't." Tourists came to see it. Schoolchildren learned his story. But to Elijah, all that mattered was that the land was healing again. He never moved away. He stayed right there on the same patch of soil his family had worked for generations. Some evenings, you could still see his lantern glowing faintly along the fence line, swaying in the breeze. People said he still listened to the earth, not for danger this time, but for peace. And every now and then, when the wind carried softly through the valley, it almost sounded like the ground was whispering back, "Thank you."